The final leg of our China journey brings us to Beijing, and unfortunately our guide failed to meet us at the airport, so with difficulty we found a taxi to take us to the hotel. The next day our guide, in purple, made amends by paying for the taxi, and we set off for Tiananmen Square. As the People's Congress was meeting close by, we had to make a big detour and of course go through the security, and they make sure you don't miss the toilet. The square is large, 440,000 square meters, and of course has a lot of people. The police have the right sort of transport to move around on. Monks with the usual expensive cameras, and Brian, or Brain as the China tours called him, then took us into the Forbidden City, which had rather an uninspiring entrance, I thought, but a good picture of Mao. We relaxed while the tickets were organized, and probably the most exciting part was watching the people. The Forbidden City itself was not too exciting. Twins with lovely hats, and a lion pouncing on its prey, or maybe its child. I wondered if the relics were us, or perhaps this large bowl which Neil was touching for good luck. We seemed to walk from one building to another with huge crowds, and you could see very little. At least not on the ground. In the air it was a little different. This was part of the concubines' garden, and oh, look, there's one of them. Apparently the Dowager chose the concubine for the evening, so the emperor had no chance. And there's a shy young lady behind her fan. And finally we reached the end, and it's time for Beijing duck lunch, the highlight of our culinary experience in China. After lunch and not feeling too energetic, we go to the Temple of Heaven, built in 1420. Looks nice. We didn't spend a lot of time there, but we will carefully check the weather to make sure our cell phones were not being used during thunderstorms, and it was on to a kung fu show at the Red Theatre. The next day, a Saturday, it's off to the Great Wall, and the traffic is appalling. It takes us an hour and a half. Not only cars, but also cows in the way. On arrival, we fight our way past the motivated hawkers, as the guidebook describes them, and onto the ticket office, where we could do tobogganing, but not this season, and finally the cable car. Take us up to the Great Wall. In the old days, you had to walk up to the Great Wall. So we're lucky.
Mango trees.
All mechanized.
A lot of mango.
Mango is in the very hot place.
Yeah.
Not in Beijing.
This part of the wall, which is not the main commercial area, is known for its Ming Dynasty guard towers. And as you can see, it's quite wide. It also goes on for a long way into the distance. And it was built to keep the Mongols out. But if you look at the countryside around it, I don't know how the Mongols could get to it. We stop and talk to some students who've just graduated and want their photograph taken. And there's the photographer. Another hour and a half, lurching this way and that in the bus as our driver tried to lane hop. We reached the Summer Palace, which we hoped that Brian had forgotten about. The boats looked inviting, but we walked with the crowds and down this covered walkway which the emperor had built. It was 800 meters long. It could be carried. The building you see was used for royal birthday parties, and to get into it you had to buy an extra ticket, which we declined to do. Fast food and coffee, which we passed with our tongues hanging out, and then Neil did some Chinese characters.
3 for Canada. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, very, very nice.
Back to our van and then back to the hotel for the night. The next morning, our final day, we went shopping. And as we were early, it was not open. But when it did open, as we walked in, all the girls bowed to us at the entrance to each of the shops. At lunch, we were met by the international director of the Chinese Conservatory of Music, and then it was off to the airport for our Air Canada flight back to Toronto and Nassau. Altogether, a very enjoyable trip.